But it's time now to take a look at another decade of church history, this time the 1970s. The 1970s were a tumultuous time. In some ways, the decade was a continuation of the 1960s. Internationally, the Nixon administration tried to improve relations with the Soviet Union through détente and established diplomatic relations with China, but neither development was able to bring decisive change, and meaningful cooperation remained elusive. The 1973 Paris Peace Accords allowed the United States to end military involvement in Vietnam, but led to the fall of Saigon on April 30th, 1975, and the unification of Vietnam as a communist state. Much of the news internationally came out of the Middle East. On September 6, 1972, 11 Israeli Olympic athletes were murdered at the Olympics, the Munich Olympics, by members of the Arab terrorist group Black September. Then on October 6, 1973, Egyptian and Syrian forces launched a coordinated attack against Israel on Yom Kippur, the holiest day of the Jewish calendar. Taking Israel by surprise, Egyptian troops swept deep into the Sinai, but Syrian forces struggled to throw occupying Israeli troops out of the Golan Heights. A ceasefire went into effect October 25, 1973. Because of Western support for Israel in the war, Arab members of OPEC reduced their oil production and proclaimed an embargo of oil shipments to the United States and other Western countries, sparking an international energy crisis. The price of a barrel of oil went from $3 to $12, and a price of a gallon of gas at the pump from 38.5 cents in May of 1973 to 55 cents in June of 1974, leading to gas rationing and long lines at the pump. In 1979, an Islamic revolution forced the Shah of Iran into exile, bringing the Ayatollah Khomeini into power. And on November 4, 1979, a group of Islamic students and militants occupied the American embassy, taking 52 Americans hostage. Other events of the 70s included May 4, 1970. 4 students from Kent State were killed and 9 wounded by Ohio National Guardsmen during a Vietnam War protest. On August 8, 1974, Richard Nixon announced he would resign from the presidency due to his role in the cover-up of the break-in at the Democratic National Committee headquarters at the Watergate Hotel, and because of his possible impeachment. On August 9th, Vice President Gerald Ford was sworn in as president. A month later, Ford issued a full and complete pardon for Nixon, and many felt this cost Ford the presidency, as he lost in 1976 to Georgia Governor Jimmy Carter. On September 17, 1978, following 13 days of secret negotiations at the presidential retreat in Camp David, Maryland, Egyptian President Anwar Sadat and Israeli Prime Minister Menachem Begin signed the Camp David Peace Accords at the White House. Egypt became the first Arab nation to have peace with Israel in exchange for Israel returning the Sinai to Egypt. In pop culture, after years of box office erosion caused by television, a combination of blockbuster movies and new technologies such as Panavision and Dolby Sound brought the masses back to movie theaters. The sci-fi adventure and special effects of George Lucas' Star Wars made it one of the highest-grossing films ever. The 1970s were a decade with tons of fads, maybe more than any other decade. These include things you might remember, such as bell-bottoms, platform shoes, earth shoes, maxis, leisure suits, disco, pet rocks, mood rings, lava lamps, CB radio, long hair on guys, feathered hair for gals, and afros. And people would head down to the local burger chef for a big chef or a super chef. Many of the inventions of the 70s led the way for the beginning of the computer age. These include the floppy disk, the microprocessor, the word processor, the Ethernet, the laser printer, and the inkjet printer, and the first personal computers and also email. Out of these advances In computers came the first popular video game by Atari called Pong. Other popular video games included Breakout, Missile Command, Centipede, and one of the most popular, Space Invaders. Other inventions of the 70s included jumbo jets, lead-free gasoline. Bic had both disposable lighters and disposable razors. Post-it notes were invented in the 70s. Rubik's Cube, the Sony Walkman, liquid crystal displays, soft contact lenses, digital watches, scannable barcodes, the MRI, and the first home video recorders, either VHS or Betamax, digital cameras, and snowboards. Here in the 70s, Rittmanites had a lot of different places to shop. Down at the new shopping center, there was Kroger's, Family Drug, West's, and Conley's. At Sunset and Main were Stop and Go and Howard's Texaco. Up on the square were Ben Franklin, Steiner Service Center, Evie's Card and Gift Shop, Stylecraft Furniture, Stepfield Pharmacy, Wald's Menwear, and B&W Oil. Other businesses around Rittman included Ruffner's, Hartzler Floors, Shook Lumber, Hershey and Rohr, Don K. Fried Ford, Hirschman Lawn and Garden, and the Redbird Food Liner. The Rittman High School class of 1970 had the distinction of being the last class to graduate from the high school on Main Street, as Rittmanites, after several failed attempts, finally passed a levy to build a new high school up on Sauer Street, opening for the 70-71 school year. And July 31st, 1970 was the 8th annual Sleepwalker sale, where employees dressed up in their favorite pajamas and sleepwear, and businesses had special sales, drawings, and giveaways with live entertainment in the shopping center at 7 o'clock. Here at the church, in the final days of the Turners among us, Reverend Robert Russell accepted the call of the congregation to pastor our church. By the end of January 1971, the Russells, Brother Bob, Connie, Michelle, and Bobby, were safely settled in the parsonage, and the transition was indeed a smooth one. In the fall of 1972, all indebtedness was paid, and the church was completely free from debt. Pastor Russell presented a plan to carry out a redecoration and a general improvement effort throughout the building. This included new lighting in the basement, overhaul of the organ, a new doorway in the rear of the auditorium, refurbishing the nurseries, upgrading the chapel with new carpet, new pews, and elevated platform and redecoration. This project was debt-free and completed on Anniversary Sunday of 1973. In 1976, the church celebrated America's bicentennial with a special service at Knupp Church. The Russells drove up in horse and buggy, and many dressed in patriotic or period dress. The growth of the church was such that another major remodeling project was undertaken in 1979. This project brought our church facility to the place it is today, with new classrooms, nursery, a new entryway, and lobby area. Also during the 70s, many of our young people were challenged to Christian service. They took advantage of opportunities such as Operation Barnabas, Time, Dry Hill, Kentucky, Navajo Indian Mission, singing in youth choirs, and going to National Youth Conference. And that's the 70s.